Blessed be the Lord who daily loads us with benefits. Psalms 68, verse 19. Hello, ladies, and welcome to Homemakers Radio. I thought you might like to have something to listen to while you prepare your lunch or dinner today, or get some last-minute things done in your home before the family comes over, and or maybe you're just home alone, or whatever your circumstances are. This is to listen to. There isn't anything to see here, but I will show you my teacup before you go. I'm wearing a cape I made for a costume a few years ago, and this goes with it very nicely. It's from Grace's Teaware, which I really like because it's hardy and it's sturdy. It has fairly large handles and capacity, and I got it at Home Goods a few years ago. You can also get Grace's Teaware online. It doesn't cost very much, and it's great for everyday use, even though it's also very beautiful. So today I'd like to first of all start out with appearance, and the reason that I do that is because if you ever feel like you're not much of a person, you feel more like you're working like a workhorse or an animal, if you'll get dressed and fix yourself up, that separates you from that feeling of just being a worker. Taking care of yourself gives you a sense of dignity, and also makes your work very special. If you'll dress up, I have seen people dress up for some of the most menial jobs, and I'm thinking, you know, she just made that job important just by the way that she dressed. I knew a farm woman once who did a lot of work for her husband because he had to be away at another job, and when she baled hay with the hay baler, she got in that tractor fully dressed, and she even put a little lipstick on. She just liked to be ready for her day. It just made her feel good. You might try some of that even if you don't wear lipstick, just to take care of yourself first and take care of your appearance. I've given you in all these videos that I have done almost a different reason every time for dressing up for your home. Now, I of course would wear an apron over anything that was extra good. I am digging a little further in my closet nowadays. I'm worn out some of the everyday clothes. I'm going into the more formal clothes that I don't wear very much. I'm going to try to wear everything out before I get anything new. Now, one of the things about homemaking that is so important to know that maybe some of you who are just starting out have not quite figured out is it's isolating, because it's just the type of job that cannot be done in a group. You can't put in a time card. You're not going to get any kind of award for it except what you give yourself. And for many of us, the reward and the award is success, is having certain things done the way that we like to have it done, to have the house cleaned up at the end of the day, to have a certain routine that we follow and we do every day. And so after you have got ready, if you want to take a break now and go get dressed, I think that you could come back later and listen to the rest of it. But after you're ready, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of going further than the things that are required in the home. We know we have to do certain daily work. You have to keep your kitchen clean and your dishes caught up. You have to keep the laundry done. You have to keep the bathroom clean. This is sanitation. This is health. This is so important. And there are certain things that have to be done in a home to keep it livable. But I believe it's also important to go a little further. One of the mistakes I made over the years was thinking that if I just got my daily work done, the sweeping, the daily chores, the taking out of the trash, the cleaning the sink, and cooking and food preparation, and laundry and keeping the bathroom sanitary, and things, that would be all would be required. But as I started to look around, and I have a little leisure time, and I'll sit in a chair, I'll just kind of look around and look up, and I'll notice that there are things that need to be painted, repaired, cleaned, that don't get done daily. And so every week there has to be one extra thing you do that is not part of the daily work. If you see something, the other day I saw something on the ceiling and I thought, this is an old place. And welcome to the manse, by the way. It's a little cottage type home. It's not perfect and has a lot of things wrong with it, and I have had to go around and patch and repair things. And I was looking at the ceiling and noticed a little hole up there, and I had to go had to get some equipment and some plaster and some paint and go fix that, because if you don't keep track of these things and have either do it yourself or have someone else do it for you, then the place will eventually crumble around you. And you might think, well, if you're in a fairly new home, it might take a lot longer, but when you're in an older home and it's already got some wear and tear on it, you want to really watch those things. Even a little crack in, somewhere in a window, you want to really keep your eye on that kind of thing. And so homemaking, I have been so busy lately just looking at all those extra things. I wonder how anybody could say to a homemaker that she's not doing anything, that she has nothing to do at home. You try living in a house and keeping it up. You can't just sit there and vegetate. You have to keep it up. And so every day I add something extra to my list. Now, I read about a girl who was a very young widow, and she had nowhere to go. It was back in the 1940s, I believe, and she had an uncle who owned an old house on a farm that was abandoned. And she asked him if no, that's not how it happened. He offered her to live there, and if she would clean it up and repair it and get it looking better on the outside and the inside, that he would give it to her. So she wasted no time in analyzing the situation as to how she would move forth. And she started with, of course, the kitchen area, because she knew she would have to prepare food for herself, and got that all cleaned up. She also painted. She also created a place for her to sleep that would be comfortable, warm, and safe. And she spent quite a bit of time on that house. It took her several years, but eventually, when her uncle died, it was left to her in the will, and I guess he was going to leave it to her all along, but she was very responsible to take care of that. And you have to look at your own situation in your own house in that way. If I take care of it, then I'm going to get to keep it and hand it down to my children or someone else. And you want to increase its value. And so let's go on to homemaking and to how your value increases if you'll keep your health. And I have talked to you about how that relates to homemaking. It gives you more stamina if you have good health. And one of the things that I have done this last year is participate in exercising from a certain video channel that I like. And I have noticed something about it. At first I was a little dubious about it. I've never liked exercise, and I've discovered that it was always taught in a bad way, and that was probably, it's like homeschooling. People would spread rumors that kids can't read anymore, or that they can't add, subtract, and everything. But if the teaching is faulty, they're not going to learn. So it's deliberate. And so it's the same with exercise. If the teaching of it was not good, then no one's going to want to exercise. And so the ones that I have joined in watching and doing are very interesting in that they are safe, and you can actually, they have some chair exercises. You can just sit in your chair. You won't lose your balance. You don't have to jump around. And they'll have you do some stretches, and you can even lean down and touch your toes, but you're still stable. You're still in your chair. And one of the reasons to keep strong, I think this is so important, to keep strong, and the more you exercise, this is what I have noticed, and this, by the way, this broadcast is only on my opinion and my freedom of speech. So everybody is different, as Lizzie was told in Pride and Prejudice. Jane told Lizzie, yes, but Lizzie, not everyone is the same. Is that you, in a situation where you feel isolated, where you feel like you don't have a purpose, once you start getting strong and you start exercising, your appetite will change. You will desire a different kind of food. You won't be feeding yourself things that are defeating your health and your weight. And so the exercise, I would say, start with the exercise. And then if you will be strong, then adversity can hit you and you won't lose your health. The most important thing you have is your health. That's what's going to make your house. Actually, that's how you're going to take care of your home and your family and teach your children, is to keep yourself in good health. And the children need to see you doing your exercises, drinking your water, doing all the things. They will imitate you. They will copy you. They will want to be like you. But you have to be happy, and you don't want your children saying that they hate you and that they want to run away. And watch your attitude and your mood, because that's really going to affect them, and affect them in later years too. And they may adopt some bad habits. So you need to clean up your health, and you need to clean up your attitude, both at the same time. Both can be done at the same time. As I've noticed with exercising, my mood is improved. And so to be healthy and strong, because in hardships it will help you triumph, and the mind has to be kept healthy, and it is kept healthy by the body being exercised. You will notice it more. You can't just psych yourself up constantly to have positive thinking and a better attitude, but your body being healthy will affect your mind, and it will make you feel more optimistic, and also to be able to discern things more easily, and not be as sucked into lies, and not be as sucked into propaganda if you are healthy. So keep healthy and strong. Another thing about homemaking, and I've learned this from living in my small manse. This is the next to smallest room in the house, and I have learned about living in little small spaces, is that to try to be a good steward. Be a good steward means to take care of the things that you own, and don't despise them. Take care of even the humblest things. And if you take care of them, then the cost goes down of maintaining your home. And if you'll maintain your home, the cost goes down on repairs. The cost goes down. And it never occurred, years ago, it never occurred to me to, clean. I'd walk past things and not think of cleaning it. And we had all that smoke here in Oregon. And I noticed when I took a paper towel and a little vinegar, I could just wipe up just about anything. A table, a ledge, a windowsill, a mirror, and there would be the black soot on it from all that smoke that came in. And even though we had the doors shut, it all got in. And there are some things that never occurred to me. I just sit here for years and kind of walk past it thinking that's part of the house structure. But the little ledge on top of the doorways, that was all black with that smoke. But if you leave stuff like that there, it does help to deteriorate the home. So if you don't want your home to be taken over by grime, it's very important. It's just like your exercise. It keeps your mind healthy. But if you clean your house, if you clean some of these things that you don't normally pay attention to, like the tops of your picture frames, like the tops of things that are hanging on your walls, like just little things that you might kind of overlook, that keeps your house healthy. And then you don't have to resort to chemicals to clean certain things. Now, ladies, I think it's really important to be a good steward, and one of the ways to do that is to keep life at home stable. With all the media hype and reports, which, if you ever noticed this about the media, they never have any hope for anybody. They never have any good news unless it's their good news saying that, that they got something put into place that is supposedly supposed to help people but doesn't. That they don't have any good news. They don't have any hope for you. And with all the hopelessness going on in the media and in the government, I think it's really important to keep the home and the life at home stable, to also be a good steward of the stability in the home and of the mood and the attitude of the home. And I think it's really important, because if you can get your appearance taken care of and get your major housekeeping, just your daily work taken care of, and then you start thinking about the spiritual values that you want to impart to your family, and keep those spiritual values. Like I've always brought in, this is easy to remember, the 2 commandments of Jesus: love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And the other thing is, and these things you can enact in your home amongst one another. And also the scripture that I read when you first came on today: blessed be the Lord who daily loads us with benefits, Psalms 68:19. If you can exchange information on benefits that you've received spiritually, physically, emotionally, even a ray of sunshine that comes in the window. These things are so important for you to teach your children if you've got children at home. If not, just say it out loud anyway, because you need to reinforce it to yourself. And just because for some of you that are older or elderly like me, you may think that your teaching days are over and that you don't have anyone to influence, and the grandchildren might look at you like, oh, she's just a funny little old lady. But you've got to keep those values in the forefront of your mind constantly, and live them and teach them, and don't let it go just because there's nobody, supposedly no one around that would be influenced by it. I think it's really important. And one of the things that you can do is you can write. That is a powerful thing. You can write something, and I've told you about these little, they were called commonplace books in the olden days. You can look those up on Wikimedia Commons. You can actually see pictures of them. Just books that people would put entries in, maybe even quotes from the Bible, quotes from authors, scientific things, nature things, and just keep a book of commonplace just ideas and things. You can do that, and I've shown you the commonplace newsletters that some ladies are doing, just so they can have a time to sit down and write down the values that they believe in, the thoughts that they have. And now we can have copy machines. We can copy those off and send them out to friends, and you can even post them online. So I think it's really important, no matter what your age, you hang on to your values. Too often we see older people, because there are no children's voices around or relatives' voices around activating their minds, they're sitting in front of a television, and they lose their values, and they start thinking that some things are okay that they wouldn't have allowed their children to do. Some things are okay now, or they'll watch things that are not really okay, that would have once embarrassed them, but because they need the sound, and they need someone's voice around, they will tolerate that. And the news media is probably more filthy than some movies, I have to tell you. And so you're just like a child. If you're a child of God, you've got to keep your mind pure, just like you would want your children's minds to be pure. We don't think of that, do we? We think it's okay to sully somebody else's mind as long as they're over 18. That's not true. So keep the home stable with your appearance, your cleanliness of your maintenance of the home, and your values, your spiritual values. Keep that alive. As a matter of fact, I think it's our spiritual values that make us want to dress up for the home, and make us want to set a beautiful table, and make us want to keep the sink clean or the laundry done. Those are actually spiritual values, because whatever your hand finds to do, the Bible says, do it with all your might as unto the Lord, and not unto man, for ye serve the Lord God. Look, is that in Colossians? I'm not sure. And it might be in Ecclesiastes as well. So keep the home stable by living your values at home. Now, I have found out something that I asked a lady the other day, how are you? And she said, I'm surviving. And she didn't look too thrilled about it. But I think that it would be better to thrive, not survive. So every bad situation, every unfortunate situation should be used as to give you some energy to thrive, not just survive. And I think it's really important to use it, don't sit around waiting for things to improve. It just never will. And I told you before, if you think that things could not get worse, they always can. And I've told people before, if you don't get back to God, and some people will leave God because their life isn't going too well, so they'll just lose all hope. And I always tell them, and maybe they're in a very bad situation, and even in the worst situations, I always say, you think that this is bad, but if you leave the Lord, it's going to get worse, because you won't have that strength, and you won't have that support. And it's so important to sing a song of gladness to the Lord, even in the worst of times. Now, so you should use uneasiness as fuel to be productive. Do you ever get to a certain time of the day, maybe around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're thinking, oh, it just feels kind of eerie around here. You know, the light is fading, and the sounds are a little bit muted, and the inside of the house seems eerie. Now, not everybody feels that. Some women pick up on it more than others. Always use, instead of thinking I'm going crazy or I need to, you know, go shopping, always use that as a stepping stone or a fuel. Always use that as a signal, a fuel to fix something, to create something, and to be productive, to actually make some progress in your life. And always have goals that are a little further than your daily accomplishments. You know, what are you going to see 20 years from now from washing all those dishes and doing all that laundry? We all know that that's temporary and that just has to be repeated every day. And I saw a Pinterest sign that said, wash, dry, repeat. And isn't that the truth? Have something that is a goal that's a little further, that's a little bit more fantastic, that's more, for example, maybe you want to paint pictures. Have that as something that you really look forward to, so when these eerie times come around, aha, that's a signal. I need to get out my, and for children, well, that's a signal. It's time to get out my crayons and create. I have so many plans. I'd have to live 2 lives to complete them all. And one of them is I'd like to make more costumes and then have the dress forms to put them on and have a little costume gallery of different eras. That's just a fantastic thing. I could actually draw it on paper and probably get a lot further with it. And I have other ideas that I want to do. I would like to learn to build something, and I would like to build maybe a guest house, maybe a playhouse, and, you know, put all my toys in it. And but this not to say that I will do those things, but I enjoy thinking about it. And so this is what you have to do when you get one of those moments where you say, I just feel so uneasy, or I have anxiety, you know, around starting in the evening. That's when you get out the books and the things that you have saved for those special moments. I think it's really good for children too, for you to have a special box of, you know, sometimes you can save a little hat box, one of those round boxes, and you put things in it, so that when you sense that your children are getting a little irritable, or they need a rest, or they are getting discouraged. Children get discouraged too. They're very sensitive to the changes in the day, the climate. Even on some maybe gloomy days, a child will often come to you and say, this is certainly a dark day. And you have a special box for them. Would you like to look at your special box? You know, and you need a special box too. A special box. I have a special book where I'm writing down things with a million ideas. You know, a million books to write, and things to do, and things to improve. And so I think self-improvement is so important, because you can't change anybody around you. You can't change the government, you can't change the news media, but you can improve yourself. You can improve your mind, you can improve your skills, you can improve your creativity, you can do something different. You know, I was looking at something that I had walked past for many years, and it was an overhead light. It was one of those, now this is an old house, so we had those old-fashioned light shades that go over a bulb, and these little screws on the side hold it in, but it were a pain in the neck. You'd have to get somebody to help you while you got on a chair or ladder, and they would hold the shade. It was usually a glass, and they would hold that while you unscrewed everything. Then you'd have to clean all that out with a brush, and then not lose the little screws. You have to keep those screws halfway in, and then you change the bulb, put that light thing on over it, and then very gingerly screw those screws back in all around. Nobody liked it. And I think they were probably invented after the Victorian era. The Victorians were good about having lights on the sides of the walls that you could change. These overhead lights. So I was looking at that thinking, I could either ignore it, because the glass had fallen one day and just broken, and I never replaced it. So there was bare bulb up there. And so I was thinking, why am I putting up with that? I could change that. And I had some things in my sewing room that had beads on them. It was on a tape, on a cloth tape, and they had a lot of clear beads on them. So I just got up there with my hot glue gun and put that up there, and it hid the bulb, and then I've got kind of a chandelier growing up there. But just increase, and I think being home, your mind starts to free up of what can be done. And if you're not going out very much and you're not trying to get all your ideas from the commercial world, you're going to free up your creativity in the home, and you can improve it. I think you should do something beautiful in your home every day, not just work. I think you should add something that gives you some delight when you walk into a certain room. There are so many things that you can do to a house. Now, I also want to remind you to be productive, to use that feeling of uneasiness. Use that feeling of, some people say they feel anxious certain times of day. Use that as fuel. Don't just sit there and feel uneasy. Use that as fuel, or go and do your exercises. You can find plenty of free ones to follow on YouTube, and use it. Use that uneasiness as fuel, and be productive. Fix something, create something, think of something, write down ideas, read something, and improve. And if you can improve yourself in your house, those are things you can change. You cannot change what's going on out there, and they will just get worse and worse. The Bible says evil men will wax worse and worse. They will always be fighting to take away your happiness and your freedom. They will always be doing that. Politicians have been doing that since Christ, the day of Christ and before. And you know how many times they misquoted Jesus Christ, the Pharisees and other people, in order to discredit him. And I was listening to somebody, and I'll try to find out who it was and leave a link to you. And he was a young man. I'm always amazed. I'm so happy that the youth today, so many of them are so sound of mind. And they are on YouTube. And I found this one man that was describing 3 things that communists do to take over a society, a nation, the narrative of the media. 3 things. And one was to declare something, and it could be wrong, but they declare it, and they declare it over and over and over again until your mind accepts it. And then when someone counters them on it, they will deny. I don't know if they deny they declared it, or they deny that anything is wrong with it. You might show them the facts, and they will just deny, deny, deny. So first they declare something that's not true. Then they'll declare it again. Then they will deny when they are caught. And then they will discredit. And the discrediting is like smearing. It's like, if you've ever studied narcissism, they like to smear someone. And they will smear people ahead of time. A narcissist will just smear someone ahead of time that hadn't even had a conflict with them, because they anticipate that this person might be in the way. This person might be a truth seeker or a truth believer, and so they've got to smear them ahead of time because they're going to try to put something over on them. And for instance, and this is getting into the people stuff, for instance, this person might be totally unaware that they're being smeared, then walk into a social situation where no one seems to be talking to them, and then find out maybe even years later that there was a person that was saying, you know what she's like, she's just real stubborn, she's just real this, or she's just real that, or she's overactive, or she reacts to everything. And it could be that the person didn't react to everything, but they were smeared, so everybody was afraid of her, and so they thought, oh, she reacts to everything. This smearing goes on, and it's very hard to live down, because and if you fight with them, if you finally figure out that this is happening, that they have declared something and then denied any responsibility for saying it, and then discredited you by smearing you, if you get in any kind of involvement with trying to straighten that out, it's like being in the tar pit. You just start slinging tar back and forth, and you get more and more stuck with them. And the best thing to do with those kind of people is turn them over to the Lord and do not have any kind of battle with them, because that's what they want. And they like to make people feel uneasy. They just want to make you feel uneasy. How many of you have been shocked by someone who suddenly said that they hated you or something, and then you worried about it? You just constantly worried about it because it's hard to go to sleep at night knowing that anybody hates you or has something against you. Well, some people won't let you go because they love to leave you in that feeling of uneasiness. They love it because you punish yourself over and over thinking about it. Now, I want to read you something, but first, I'm going to read you a recipe and this is about a recipe. This is a spiritual recipe that I'm going to read you. I'll read you the spiritual recipe first. Okay, this is Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7. Now, this is a recipe, and you cannot just throw it all. When you read a recipe, which I'll read to you later, there's instructions after you see the list of ingredients. You can't just throw everything in a bowl and stir it all up. It won't turn out, because certain things have to be mixed a certain way first and then added to something else a certain way, and some things you can't add to one thing. For instance, you cannot take baking powder and put it in a bowl and then add water, because the baking powder will activate too quickly and might not rise very well when you start adding the other ingredients and baking it. So everything has to be done according to the way it was listed. So listen to this. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Now the next thought. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Now the next thought. Do not be anxious. Now I looked that up in the Greek and it meant uneasy. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication. Now see, here's another part to this. Well, let's do the first part. Do not be anxious about anything. Okay, here's the next step. But in everything by prayer and supplication. And here's the next step, with thanksgiving. And here's the next step, let your requests be made known to God. Now those are ingredients. And let's see what happens when you mix them up. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Now, a lot of people will read that and they'll not realize that this is a recipe, or these are steps to something else. And the ending is, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And so they flip through all this and it says, all these things you have to do, but they don't realize that it all comes to a certain end. So I'm going to read you a recipe and show you how foolish it is to think you're going to take a scripture and you're just going to do it, or you're going to pick out something you like better than something else in that scripture and just do that. For instance, knowledge. We're told to increase our knowledge in the New Testament and in the Old Testament. And you think, well, knowledge, I love knowledge. I'm a good learner. I could learn very easily and very quickly. Yes, a lot of us could memorize a lot of things. But there's other things like wisdom and understanding and equity and good judgment that we might not be able to develop. So all these things have to be added a certain way. Otherwise, you just end up with knowledge. And what does the Bible say about knowledge? If you're filled with all kinds of knowledge, you could also be puffed up and you end up just being a bunch of noise. So here is a recipe, and I'm going to tell you what all's in it, and then I'm going to show you how that it has to be blended a certain way. And this is the same with any character studies in the scriptures. Okay, this is called the vanilla bean cake. It has butter, sugar, eggs, a vanilla bean, flour, baking powder, salt, buttermilk. And then it says, first you have to preheat your oven. Then prepare your pans. And then in a medium bowl, mix the butter and sugar. It says softened butter. Butter and sugar, and then add eggs one at a time. Now, I learned this the hard way when I was very young. You have to read these instructions, because if you don't add those eggs one at a time, they're very hard to blend, to mix. I like to put them in a separate bowl and mix them really well and then add them, but other people do it differently. But still, You can't, there has to be a procedure for which this happens, because each ingredient activates the previous ingredient in a certain way, or completes it. So then put in the vanilla bean seeds, and then it has 3 steps. And then in another bowl, combine the dry ingredients. Then gradually add the dry ingredients, it's the flour mixture, to the butter mixture, alternately with your buttermilk. So you can't just throw all your liquid ingredients together and then all your dry ingredients together and mix each up and then mix them in. You've got to follow it this way. A lot of these recipes have not been tested, but I have figured out which ones have been tested, and they are the ones that have these precise mixing instructions. So then it says beginning and ending with flour. So pay close attention to that. And it says spoon batter onto prepared pans, bake for 20 to 25 minutes, and let cool for 10 minutes. How many of you know you have to let cakes and other baked goods cool for 10 minutes and realize that that 10 minutes they're still baking? Once you get them out of the oven, they're still baking. So you can't leave them in longer than necessary. And then it tells you how to take them out of the pan. Now, when we went to home ec classes in the olden days, we had little kitchens in the schools, and we just learned how to prepare everything step by step, and it was just such a wonderful experience to have teachers that cared, that would teach us how to take care of the home and to cook. I would like to have some of those little units we had in the olden days in the schools, and have some people over and have them all learn step by step. I'd really like to go to another class myself. Now, I had been reading this book called Just Breathing the Air that I wrote with my parents, and some of you ordered some, and it will take 2-3 weeks maybe for those to get to you, because this is self-published. That means that I have a printer that makes these. It's on a disc, and when I order one, they activate the disc, and then of course, you know, all the pages have to dry, and then they have to put them together, and then it has to be boxed and sent to the address. So it does take a while, and of course this is a very high quality book, and it's not lightweight. Now, a lot of people are confused about that, and they will write to me and say, well, couldn't you get it done cheaper at, and they mention a bunch of publishing places, and Amazon and Google and all this will print books, but this, I'm happy, it's very hard to redo a book once you've already done it, and I would have a hard time. It's a hard job if you're doing a good job on a book, and I don't want to, I'm happy with the way it is. There are a few mistakes that I made in here because I'm the editor. What they do, if you want to publish your own book, and when you get this, I think you'll be inspired to do your own, because you need to tell your story, you need to tell your childhood. And what I did for my childhood was, I did read a couple of things in here that weren't pleasant, but what I did is try to bring out the sunshine in it, the goldenness, the gladness in it. And I was inspired by my mother's comment at the beginning of the book, where she said, when she was raising us all, these were the golden years with my children and my husband. So I tried to look at life like that. There will be times that aren't so golden and aren't so nice, but I think it's really, to make a book worthwhile, you don't want to put too much gloom and doom in it. As, what was it Jane Austen said, let other pens declare the gloom and the doom, something like that. She even used some of the hard times in her books to tell a story, or in a humorous way, or find a different lesson from it. So when you get this, then you will see why I like the way that it's done, and you will like, there are just so many things you'll like about it. And so as far as the price goes, I noticed the other day when I went and looked at I was going to order one for myself. Now, when I order one for myself, I pay the same as you pay. I've just told you how much it will cost. This is just the printing. This is just the postage. That's what I pay when I order a book. Well, the cost was $34 the other day. I noticed it went up $4. But you're also paying, I'm also paying for the production of it. The company, the printing company itself, does require some money for payment. So they take maybe $4 or $5 out of the cost of the book. But when you're self-publishing, it's totally different. You cannot have, you know, there isn't a warehouse full of these books stacked up. And my house doesn't have any. I have 2 in my house because that's how come you can get books so cheap from thrift books, is that they're pre-printed by in mass, so you can get them a lot cheaper when they're done like that. But you've got to have some place to keep them, and you have got to have and these printing companies that are for self-publishing, they have them on a disc, which is very handy, and every book is very fresh. It won't have a smell or anything. So today I'm going to, and I always like to tell you, see, this is just a small book, but there's a behind story for every story. So the advantage of listening to me read it is that I'm also going to tell you the behind story of everything. And the behind story, that's the name of, these are not chapters, these are entries, because sometimes an entry will just be 1 page. So that's not a chapter, and I have quite a few entries. Let me see how many I have. So you can do it how you want to, because you're the editor, and you're the publisher, and you're the one who's going to check everything. And so you don't have to have it. You can just have little vignettes. And this is called the breakdown, and the behind story of this is that whenever we got ready to go somewhere, if we wanted to get out there and get on the road and get going, and the car didn't break down in the summer, you didn't stay back. And my mother, just like any mother, liked to feed her children before we went somewhere, so we wouldn't have to worry about getting hungry and having to stop and find something to eat. So we just left the dishes we just left everything there. We didn't clean up, and we always expected to be right back anyway. But that, I told you that as a behind story because it's going to come up later. The breakdown. We did not always stay on the homestead. In winter, we traveled by car to Anchorage to shop and stay with our good friends, the Ramers. One particular winter, we were traveling in an old car which my father said wasn't any good. It was already quite dark, and us kids were asleep. I say us kids because that's what we called ourselves. I know it's not grammatically correct, but I wrote it in here. The car broke down near a gas station in Soldotna. The roads were packed with snow. The temperature was freezing. Daddy built a huge fire in the middle of the snow and heated up some bricks. I don't know where he got them. I suppose people carried them with them. There were always plenty of obliging birch and spruce trees with limbs falling off to feed a fire. He wrapped the bricks in towels for us all to put our feet on them to keep warm. The gas station seemed to be closed, but the proprietor lived in a room inside, and he noticed us and offered shelter. Inside the station was a room with a cash register, cans of oil for sale, and some cloths to wipe car windows. There was a small kitchen with an electric refrigerator, table and chairs, a couch, and the couch provided a place for us to sit and wait for the car to be fixed. The room was heated by a stove, and it felt mighty good to be in there. Now, in those days, they were all, they used wood as fuel to heat. The younger children fell asleep, and the older children sat there looking a little dazed in the middle of the night. The sink was piled high with unwashed dishes that looked like they had been there a long time, and the floor was dirty. Mama saw a broom leaning against the wall, so she asked if it would be okay if she swept the floor. Now, this is also a tactic to keep your spirits up and to keep warm. Start sweeping. The gas station man said he didn't mind at all. She said she feels she needed to repay him for his hospitality and asked if he had a wife. He said he did not. She washed all the dishes. Just imagine, the older ones were sitting there watching her do this. She washed all the dishes and cleaned up the living area. He thanked her a lot, and she told him he should get a wife. His expression registered some wise amusement. He looked at our mother and then out the window at her husband working on the car that was no good, and back to the row of tired children on his couch. Meanwhile, a truck driver on his way to Kenai noticed the huge blazing fire and stopped to see what was going on. By now it was very dark. He offered to take us all to Kenai. We got in his roomy cab for the ride to Kenai. Our dad stayed and fixed the car so that it could at least be pulled home. The driver stopped at a cafe that was open all night. We were awfully cold, and some of us were crying. So the proprietor gave us all a bowl of free soup and some crackers. I remembered my hands being so cold that I could not touch the bowl of soup. It was still in the middle of the night, and we were not especially hungry, but we did our best to eat a little. Daddy finally came with the car to the cafe to get us. It seemed to me that this day had been extra long and full of troubles. I was never so glad to be safely back on the homestead with a warm fire in the cook stove. Now, this next one is connected to that story. Eating on the other side of the plate. Now, if you're going to write your own story, what you need to do is let your mind be very sensitive to some of the happiest memories. Like, what is the first happiest memory you can remember? Okay, then let that trigger another happy memory, and then another. And it doesn't all have to be happy, but it has to be somehow edifying to you and to others. Eating on the other side of the plate. After a cold trip like that, we came to the log house with a huge appetite. Before we left the homestead for our trip, we had breakfast, but had left the plates on the table. We had not expected to be gone so long, and now the plates were frozen on one side with crusted food from the meal we had eaten before we left on our trip. Mama was not the least bit disturbed about it. She just turned all the plates upside down, and we ate off the other side. The other side was clean, and Mama was practical. The only thing that we missed was the thrill of uncovering the picture of the little man crossing the bridge on the blue willow dishes. In those days, before the well was dug, washing dishes was not a simple chore. Water had to be hauled by the bucket from the lake, heated on the cook stove, and mixed with melted snow in order to get the right temperature. That day we came in from the cold. It was easier to eat off the other side of the plates. So I have a lot more to read to you, but I would like to save it a little bit. And I have skipped quite a few stories, so that those of you who are getting the book are going to have a lot more stories in here. Now, I hope that in some way this has helped you today, and I hope that you will have a very good day. And I'm sorry that it isn't longer, but I did want to save some of that for later so that I could read some more to you. So there are two ways to get this book. The easiest way for me is for you to go to my donate button on the left and donate the amount of money for the book, and then indicate in the little space that PayPal leaves you to leave a comment, tell me what this is for and give me your name and address. And then I will go to the online printing company and I will have a copy sent to you. It takes a couple of weeks for it to arrive. And because they make them up brand new whenever they're ordered. And the other way is to send me an email and give me your name and address, and I will have a copy sent to you. And then I will also give you my address. Okay, ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you and your family are extremely blessed today, and that you won't worry about, you won't become uneasy about anything, and use that uneasiness to do something, to give some progress for your life. Is there anything you've always wanted to be or do? You can do it, and the home provides that wonderful place for it. And it cannot be disturbed if you'll put certain values in place. So, ladies, if you have time today, leave me a comment. If not, I hope you have a wonderful time, and I'll see you next time.